Previously on Reading in Church and Other Distractions.
When you make a covenant in the Old Testament, usually the term is to cut a covenant. That's the way they say that. Probably a reference to what's done while you're making the covenant.
And you're cutting an animal.
You are cutting an animal, exactly, in half, right?
What's behind that?
That if you do not live up to your obligations in the covenant, that what happens to the animals will happen to you.
Like a gang initiation.
Right. Yes, I don't know how many times I've heard that used as an illustration, in fact.
The gangs of Israel.
The 12 gangs of
Sons
Israel.
of Anarchy. 12 of them.
But that you have, it's interesting because in Genesis 15, you have God, it seems, is the one who passes between the animals. So sort of telling Abraham, I'm the one who's going to be fulfilling this.
But it's serious stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you're
joining a gang.
You're making a commitment to Yahweh, or Elohim in this case, who is...
Some gangs, when they get the gang tattoo, they say, if you leave the gang, we'll come and get the tattoo. It's like, wow. It kind of drives it home.
See,
not unlike this. Okay?
I've got like 3 jokes that I should probably just keep to myself at this point. It's just better.
I can edit them out.
No, you've said that before, and then I've listened to the podcast and found out these things were not edited out.
There it is. And it becomes the title.
Exactly.
Of the podcast.
Exactly. Oh,
why do I think gangs are going to show up?
I'm absolutely confident the title will involve gang initiations. So, anyway.
We never know the title going in.
This is true. We really don't.
We're so committed to improv.
Fortunately, it's something we can do.
Yeah, let's call it that.
Welcome to Reading in Church and Other Distractions with Rob and Mike.
Well, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Robert Wallace.
I'm Michael McKeever.
Sometimes I think we really ought to just keep this thing running so people can hear what we're talking about in the setup.
We've got about 5 minutes of setup. So.
Yeah, the pre-show, the 45 minutes of pre-show that we were doing there. But it is the first Sunday of Lent, these texts. And I think this time, year A.
Year A.
So just to keep it
fresh.
Keep it fresh.
We're back in year A.
Although I did notice we had a lot more listens this week for year B. Year B must market better than year A.
Can't promise where we're going to go from here.
What's going there? Remember, if you're listening to us on iTunes, to make sure and leave a review. Like us on Facebook and send an email to what's the official email address?
readinginchurch@gmail.com.
And maybe we can have our mailbag at some point on the podcast. That would be fun.
The Earthlink email is no longer functioning.
The AOL one does.
AOL.
And the CompuServe, both of those. I'm afraid they closed those down. So
just dial up here.
Yeah, we're skewing. I'm afraid we're skewing a little old on that one. So of course I don't know what the age of our listeners are.
Yeah,
so
I don't.
But that's okay.
They're cutting edge. They listen to podcasts.
That's right. They're listening to a cutting edge lectionary podcast. Yeah, so these are the youth of today, millennials, I'm sure. We have 4 texts: Genesis 2 and 3. So the end of Genesis 2, part of it, and Genesis 3, Psalm 32. Matthew 4, 1 through 11, and Romans 12 through 19. So we've moved from 1 Corinthians to Romans for our
Romans
Lenten.
5, 12 through 19. We'll just drop in the middle of that. I'm sure it's easy to figure out what Paul's talking about.
Sure. Just nothing like popping in the middle of one of Paul's arguments.
Oh my gosh. Yes, this is a good example of that.
He doesn't speak really eloquently, so it shouldn't be that hard. At least according to him, he doesn't speak very eloquently.
Right. So. I was listening to an interview on the way to school, the university. Maybe give our coordinates of the university someday.
Undisclosed university.
Make it like a treasure map, so give more information every. But I was listening to the interview with the director of Manchester by the Sea.
Okay.
They're talking about the dialogue, and he writes the dialogue so they're talking over the top of each other, and people really like that movie. So maybe.
We should just talk over each other?
Should just go. I mean, we already do that.
See, I've heard several people that Manchester by the Sea was so depressing, they don't know what they're going to do with the rest of their life now. That it was so
4 stars.
It was so dark for them. I haven't seen it. I had no intention. Although being married to a chaplain, it's probably something that she would enjoy. Okay. I mean, still Alice, something really happy and up. So anywho.
So no. I shouldn't just go on Romans when you're reading Genesis?
Just do the ball. We save time. We cut the podcast in half.
I can re-edit it any way we want. So
that's true.
Don't put me in a box.
That's a good. Oh, I would never try to limit your technical skill.
I'll break out. I mean, I'll play with it for a while and bat it around, but I'll eventually
technical brilliance
break out.
Though we are now recording these in the weeks in which they are coming live, so we've taken away our buffer zone. So.
No safety net.
That's right.
How'd that work out last week?
That's a fair point.
The flying Walindas are no more.
Splat. So, all right. Well, let's
rethink this.
Look at our texts and see what is in store.
All right. So should I read Genesis?
Please.
Right. Genesis 2:15 through 17 and 3:1 through 7. So this is probably page 2 on your Bible if you're following along.
Pretty close.
You're reading in church study Bible, prophecy edition. All right. And the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to till it and keep it. And the Lord God commanded the man, "You may freely eat of every tree of the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day that you eat of it, you shall die." Now the serpent was more crafty than any other wild animal that the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, I thought he just put the man there. So, okay. You can fill in the blanks.
We jumped between verse 17 there, yeah.
Did God say, "You shall not eat from any tree in the garden"? The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden. But God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die." But the serpent said to the woman, "You will not die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, pronounce that right, and they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves. This was approximately 2:30 on day 6 of creation.
So, wow. Okay, look, how long? I mean, I've got a few things we can talk about here, but...
There's only so much room on the internet.
That's true. So. I don't want to take up all the internet space.
Yeah.
I will run out of hard drive space.
Make this a children's sermon and not the main sermon.
Oh, boy.
That would be good for any time you're talking to me, actually.
That's a good point. The first thing I want to say, I think, is in the very first verse you read, 2:15. The Lord God took the man, put him in the Garden of Eden to till it and keep it. Those two words, till and keep, also could be translated to serve and to guard, or serve and to protect.
Oh.
So, I mean, it's a much more ecological message. To work it, yes, but it's also the word for servanthood. It's actually to serve the ground as well, to be a servant to it. So, I mean, there's a strong, both in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, both of those creation stories, there's a strong ecological.
So it means till it and keep it, and what else?
Is work it, serve, work it.
Whip it, work it.
No, to serve it.
Serve it, yes,
yeah,
okay.
But it's actually a word for servant. It's the same word for Obadiah, servant of the Lord, Obadiah. It's, to serve that, and then to guard it, to keep it.
Yeah.
Actually, the word shomer is in one of the noun forms of it means eyelid, so that we are actually sort of creation's eyelids. We got to keep the dust and bad things out and let it work.
Okay.
So
is that shared with the when the angel has the fiery sword? Is he keeping it, guarding it? Is that the same word?
I think maybe. Yeah, okay, guard the way to the garden.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoa.
I'll have to look that one up, but it's possible.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I think I would want to say. The man receives the command not to eat of the tree, but you will notice that when the woman appears and the serpent asks, "Can you eat?" she says, "You shall not eat, nor shall you touch it, or you will die."
Yeah.
God never said anything about touching the fruit. They can play with the fruit all they want, but they're not allowed to eat it, apparently. So it would seem that the man has added to the commands of God. Because this command in chapter 2, verse 17, comes before woman is created.
So how
so
would she know?
She's not around to hear that command. So she would have gotten from the man. So he has added to the commands of God. Now, I understand.
He's building a hedge around.
I understand the desire to fence in the law.
Yes.
I do. However, I've got to believe that adding to the commands of God probably a bad idea.
Okay.
That's just my philosophy.
That's often what is entailed in fencing in the law.
It is.
Like,
creating...
it's not even say God's name.
Right. So that's a problem. And so what ends up happening is when she reaches it and touches it and she doesn't die, immediately God's a liar.
Oh.
So that by adding this, the man has ruined God's credibility.
Oh.
And then, of course, the one thing I'd want to point out are the four...
Is that a common interpretation?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Yeah. I was working my idiosyncratic interpretations also.
But I do think I think it's a natural reading of the text.
No,
however.
that makes sense. Yeah.
I do think the four most overlooked words in this translation come in verse 6, after she gave some to her husband, who was with her. That in verse 6, he's apparently been standing here, we find out, the entire time, but has not been named and has been rather quiet and has never said, hey, maybe we shouldn't talk to the serpents, or that's not what I said don't eat it. I mean, nothing. He says nothing.
The camera pans left. There's Adam right there.
He's been standing there the entire time.
You want to weigh in on this, buddy?
Nothing. He said absolutely nothing. And my contention has always been because he wants it as badly as she does.
Okay.
But he has an advantage because she's going first.
Okay.
So, she eats the fruit, she collapses dead.
Goodness.
He doesn't do anything, right? God shows up and he says, "Oh no, this one was broke. This was broke or something. I told her not even to touch it." But no. So, but when she eats and doesn't die, boom, he's got it as well. Also, I think there's some evidence she's been fixating on it already. The serpent is just playing on her already desires, because when he says, can you eat of any of the fruit? She says, we can't eat the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden. Well, in chapter 2, there are two trees in the middle of the garden, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Right. But for the woman, there is only one tree in the middle of the garden, the tree that she's not allowed to have. Yeah. Right. So which tree can't you have? That one right over there. That one in the middle. Yeah. The one in the middle there, we can't have that one. That's the one that we're not allowed to have.
Don't think of a pink elephant.
Right. I mean, that's very much her focus here. So all of that tied into all of this. So those are my first thoughts as I survey this. I have questions that
you've read this before.
Once or twice this has come up. Yeah.
Does this come up in your classes that you teach? It does.
I spend about 3 days on these.
Wow.
Genesis 1, 2, and 3.
Goodness.
Yeah,
okay.
I tell them we're going to go a little faster later on, but I spend a lot of time on that. They set the tone.
That's like me in the Luke and Infinite scenario.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's okay. We're going to make up time later.
It sets the tone.
You guys might want to use the bathroom before we get back in the car. we're not stopping for the next 1,000 miles.
We're not stopping for the next 6 books. Yeah. But I have questions that I'll never get answered, and I'm afraid to ask them to you because God knows where this is going to go if I do. Yeah. But one question that I've never gotten answered is the first verse of chapter 3. The serpent was more crafty than any other animal the Lord God has made. On the heels of the last verse of chapter 2. Chapter 2's last verse says, they were naked, the man and his wife, and they were not ashamed. Literally, chapter 3, verse 1 says, the serpent was more naked than any other.
More naked?
More naked. It's a homophone.
Whoa.
With naked. They sound and look exactly the same. And so I have always tried to figure out, what is it?
Wait a minute, they're homophone. They what?
No, they are spelled exactly the same.
Spelled the same, okay.
And they sound exactly the same.
This is one of those
one means
punny sort of
It
things.
is, very much. And so then, what am I missing, right? How is knowledge, craftiness, and nudity, what is the issue there? And so they were clever, but they were not ashamed. They were naked, but not ashamed. Yeah. He was more crafty. And then with all of the who told you were naked, you will know you. They knew they were naked, and all of this going on in this.
That extremely naked snake.
That really, see, because where I come from, naked is a binary position, right? You are naked, you aren't naked. Those are two.
Yeah,
right. I don't get more naked.
Naked is something else.
I don't quite get that. Well, there's the old Louis Grizzard joke about that Southern English is better than Northern English because in it there's more precision in the language, because in the North you have one word, naked, which means you have no clothes on. In the South you have two words. You have naked which means you have no clothes on, and naked, which means you have no clothes on and you're up to something.
That's why I was being careful about my pronunciation.
That's right. So maybe the man and woman were naked but not ashamed, but the serpent's more naked than any other animal.
Naked.
I don't know.
He's up to something.
But it's always been translated as crafty. There's that sense of shrewdness, craftiness, knowledge. Yeah. It's an unusual. So that's one I don't.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know.
No, I mean, I've heard you talk about this, and it's just, do continue to have new revelation on
I
that?
don't. I have no revelation on that whatsoever.
Okay.
It's a stump one for
me.
Yeah,
there's a few things in the New Testament that's like, I got nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and this is an interesting chapter. I mean, the other one that I do have a theory on, after this, the punishments are meted out, and the man and the woman get the same punishment. They both get increased difficulty in their labor.
Labor.
That's the woman's is childbirth, the man's is, but the Bible is portraying these as the same punishment.
Well, yeah, hoeing weeds.
I'm not seeing them as equivalent. I'm telling you the text.
I'm going to mow the lawn. Let me know when the baby comes.
The text is reading these as equivalent. I am not advocating this.
Male perspective.
As a witness to the event twice, as I always tell them, it's disgusting and scary and terrifying. And yes, it's miraculous, but then it's disgusting right after the miracle again. So don't even.
And it didn't look like it was easy for my wife either.
But so the man and the woman are punished. The ground and the serpent are cursed. They're the only two things cursed in the text in chapter 3.
Cursed, punished.
Okay. And one of the serpent's part of the curse is that he crawls on the ground and eats dust, which of course makes the students ask, well, what was he doing before now, right? Did he have legs? Did he bounce like a tigger? What was he, a gecko? What was the serpent before then? And I think what is happening here is there are a number of accounts in the ancient Near East of serpents being honored. Like you can think of the Egyptian royal headdress with the cobra that's up and ready to strike. There's several pictures of in Assyria of the goddess, I believe it's Astarte, who's holding these two serpents, and they're both curled up ready to strike. So I think the image is that it's not that you'll be curled up ready to strike. You're going to be crawled down. So you're not going to be honored.
Okay.
You'll be exactly. There's going to be enmity between you and the woman here.
Okay.
And so the honor is being brought down low. So I don't think it's about locomotion.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's about position and honor there in the serpent's
Yeah, that's
case.
the thing. It's like on the one hand, these are deeply embedded in related cultures.
Right.
On the other hand, we're not supposed to necessarily extrapolate a backstory from a poetic sort of way of
talking
relating
about these things.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
It's like where that's always a tough balance to strike.
Without question. Yeah, without question. And so it's an interesting text. I mean, there's all sorts of things. What is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Is that the tree of knowing the difference between good and evil?
It's the internet.
Is that you get to define for yourself what's good and what's evil, that you're making the call?
Like when I say stupid things, you raise your voice, put your head down, your blinders on. I'm going to keep going.
I'm not going to power through this.
Do not engage.
I'm going to power through this. Or is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil meant to be sort of an inclusive, like everything from good to evil, right? Soup to nuts. It's the whole is knowledge, tree of the knowledge of everything.
Soup to nuts.
And so it's we're back to that again. We had a podcast named Soup to Nuts, didn't we?
Right. Can't use that one.
So is that what is meant by the tree? Don't know. And the other question is the tree simply I'm putting this here, don't touch it forever? Or is it, I'm putting this here, and when you have grown to a point, we'll talk about you being able to
well, that's the thing. There's
so
much here that is about, they're like babies. They're naked and they don't know anything.
Well, that would be in a very Eastern perspective, right? That's the Western perspective is they're created fully formed, fully rational, and they're being asked for the statement of obedience, stay away from that tree. Right. The Eastern perspective is they're young, they're naive, and they want to leap over the period of maturity and jump to the end on that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've got two different church perspectives on how you read this text. Is this, creation, fall, redemption, or is it fall in the sense that away from the ability to become like God, and then
you're not the boss of me,
right? Then the sacrifice of Christ gets you back on the road to become like God again. Yeah. And so,
I mean, there's a lot there. There's a lot to commend the immaturity aspect.
Yes, I think you're right. I think the Eastern position. I mean, we're always drawn to the thing that's different than what we grew up in, I think. But
I didn't really know that was the Eastern perspective. That's like, when you think about it, this is a lot like children.
It is, yeah. And that's very much an Orthodox and capital O Eastern Orthodox view of this text versus the more Augustine perspective.
I may be young and naive, but I read these as young and naive people.
Well, I mean, I can't imagine.
I may be projecting my own issues.
I can't imagine people projecting their own issues on the Bible. That's,
on Genesis.
Nobody ever would do something like
Safe
that.
Safe territory. Yeah.
But anywho, that is the
and eyes being opened,
and they knew, good and evil, and they would be like God. See, that's one of the things I think that also commends the Eastern reading, because in Genesis 1, God wants to make humanity in our image after our likeness. And then here in Genesis 3, they do this thing that makes them like God, and God gets angry. So why would God want to make people like him, and then when they become like him, get angry about how he becomes like them? Okay. Well, the point is that you're not allowed to do it that way. You want to do it God's way, not your way. Yeah. And I mean, the capital S sin that's happening here is we know better for our life than God does. I mean, that's what it is. Right. I mean, from the very beginning, it's, God wants you to do it this way. And you're like, I don't want to do it that way. Oh. I don't want to reflect that image. I want to make my own image.
Oh, and image period.
And so I'm not going to bear that. I'm going to do it my way. And so, I mean, that's the hubris. That's the arrogance that you see here. And then that's what all sin is that God would have me go this way, and I don't want to go that way. I want to do it my way. Lack of humility.
When you read this as a parent, I mean, I read it different having been a parent and thinking, I know I've seen my kids, I've seen their innocent phase, and it's very, it's a little bit heartbreaking to see when they become self-aware and they're not what they used to be. And that complicates life and it complicates relationship, but I don't think it's nearly as stern as we project upon God or the tradition we inherit about God's anger at this. It's some of the Western readings are so severe.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, so severe.
That's true.
About fall and the break and the harm to the relationship.
Well, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I do think that it's fascinating that the minute they get this newfound knowledge, they do something stupid. They make clothes out of leaves. I mean, it's the very first thing you do is something dumb with their new eyes opened, and I mean, because I don't see you. You're not wearing leaves currently. I'm not either. Wearing leaves.
Well, we don't. It's a podcast. We just trust us. We're not wearing
Nobody's
leaves.
wearing leaves.
No one's wearing leaves.
And God ends up providing for them after this event.
So is it shame they feel? So they're making.
Yeah.
Okay.
They are ashamed. And I also think it's interesting that when God makes them clothes, He kills animals. He kills some animals, takes their skin, and makes clothes out of animal skin. And so human sin now has negatively affected creation. These poor animals are walking along minding their own business, and now they're part of the fall line.
Yeah.
That human, once again, we come back to human sin it doesn't just affect us.
Yeah.
We live in community with one another, and we live in community with this world, and human sin is actually now negatively affecting the world because of this decision. So I think that's significant as well, and a call to commit ourselves to God because we live in community with each other and with the world. It's important.
So why did they eat an apple and then dress in a fig leaf? Where's that? Which verse is that?
I'm sure that within the translation, but yeah, in Latin, when this text is translated into Latin, the words evil and apple look the same.
Oh,
and so the tradition of the apple comes because of the Latin translation.
Yeah.
I think the serpent would have gotten further with me with an orange than an apple. I
orange?
like oranges
really?
than I like apples, personally. I'm a Honeycrisp.
Wow, that would be hard.
That's totally different.
Look at that.
But
perfect apple.
Yeah. So yeah, sewed fig leaves together, which don't exactly make comfortable clothing.
Oh, it does say fig leaves. Okay.
It does. Fig leaves
but it doesn't say apple. Okay.
It does not. It says malos. It says in.
So it's leaves of a tree. Mm-hmm. They've eaten from a tree. Is there anything there?
I don't think so, but it is, I think, significant that after the flood, Noah plants a garden and drinks of that fruit, getting wine. And,
a lot of
it. So
it.
there's almost as many people see that story, that bizarre. That is not in the lectionary story where Noah passes out drunk naked in his tent and then curses his grandson for his son seeing him naked.
Yeah,
perfect sense. Fairly logical story.
Things get a lot easier after Genesis 1 through 11.
They do. But that story is sort of a showing that humanity hasn't changed, kind of reinforcing.
Oh, yeah.
Reinforcing
little bookends. Okay, I see. Yeah.
Reinforcing God's point that human heart is it's just what we've got. This is what I got with people, and it's what I got to live with. So.
Yeah. Did I ever talk about that PBS series where they're reading Genesis? Did we talk about that?
Not on the podcast.
It's Bill Moyer reading Genesis.
Yeah.
And he has drawn upon all these great scholars and biblical scholars and Jewish scholars and literary critics and artists. And the first 11 chapters are horrible discussion because they don't know how to read it. Once you get to Abraham, then the conventions of reading are that's a much closer narrative to what we read now. But they are misreading the first 11. Yeah. They don't know how, they're not respecting that genre distinction.
I have said many times to students that the Genesis 1 through 11 is the Old Testament version of "You have heard it said, but I say unto you." So Genesis 1 and 2 are, you've heard it said about creation, the Enuma Elish and all these other, but I say unto you this. You've heard it. I mean, everyone believed in a flood.
It's the Old Testament's Old Testament.
It's what it is. Everyone believed in a flood.
Just blew my mind.
Everyone in the world believes in a flood. The Bible's not trying to prove a flood. The Bible is saying when you think about the flood,
the starting point. Yeah.
Think about it like this.
Right. Yeah.
There was in the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation story, there's a story of the tower that was built from Marduk, and they baked bricks and they set it
They're
up.
They're ripping off Genesis, though.
And no. Oh, okay. Genesis came next.
Oh, okay.
And Genesis is saying, when you think of the tower, when you're thinking of the tower, think of it this way. When you're thinking of the flood, think of it this way. When you think of creation, so you've heard this said about where art and culture and stuff comes from. This is where the Bible says it comes from. So it's correcting, it's living within, as you say, that cultural identity and offering correctives that those early readers would do, would hear. So
okay.
I'm
nodding.
Misreading Genesis 1 through 11 is a time-honored tradition.
You're saying there's older stuff than the old stuff I'm familiar with.
I'm saying there's very old stuff.
This is not the beginning of the conversation.
And the Bible is aware of that old stuff, and it provoked them to write, right? Mm-hmm. In the same way that Paul hears what's going on in Corinth and needs to write something to Corinth. Yeah. These early authors heard what people are saying about the creation of the flood and go, no. It's not a polytheistic battle. The earth's not a trophy. Humans aren't servants. In fact, one single God created. Human beings are royal. They have a royal commission. They're supposed to serve and protect the nature. I mean, so it's offering these countercultural perspectives where, in a world where only the king would be in the image of God, the Bible comes along and says everyone bears God's image. And, where humans are said to be servants so the gods can rest, God asks for co-creators in this world who are princes and regents living with their own stewards.
And gives them rest.
So it is a radical, countercultural, and I would argue from a biblical perspective, prophetic perspective from Genesis 1 to 11 that you're right. Many people don't read well. I could do a podcast on Genesis 1 through 11, obviously.
Well, it's just interesting to know that going in, but then seeing people who clearly have the gifts for reading well. Just a train wreck. And then it gets so much better. It's like, there's a good argument for this being distinctive in character from what follows.
Well, it's always an appreciation of genre, right? I mean, you go to a romantic comedy, you're pretty convinced that at no point an infected monkey is going to escape a lab and threaten human population on Earth. That's not the way, that doesn't happen in a romantic comedy, right?
The one given.
And so if you need a sensitivity.
To choose an extremely random example.
Well, I'm just saying you want to have a sensitivity to genre. Don't read apocalyptic like wisdom literature, right? Don't read wisdom literature like Torah. Don't read Torah like the creation, like these epics from Genesis 1 to 11. These are all different genres, and you want sensitivity to that when you read them. So, and that avoids the.
Now I'm trying not to think about monkeys.
Sorry about that.
Dang.
Sorry about that. You are convinced when you watch a romantic comedy that someone will always go grocery shopping and choose paper, never plastic. When they get their bread, it will always be a baguette.
It
was. I mean, there's certain conventions in your romantic comedies,
and the grocery store will be walked to. And
exactly. And one bag, they won't push a cart.
One bag, yes.
So. Yeah, but no infected monkeys threatening human population.
No infected monkeys,
is what I'm saying.
Hardly ever, or they're edited out. They don't test well.
It depends who's directing that, but most times, you don't get infected monkeys threatening human population.
Non-Python,
right?
Rom-coms.
Exactly.
All right. Well, rom-com, there's a natural segue to Psalm 32. Well, we're talking about romantic comedies and infected monkeys.
Sure.
Yes, it's a natural opening here.
Well, let's Psalm 32 then.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, just put that on the tee and we'll smack it out of the park. Okay, Psalm 32, 1 through 11. Mm-hmm. Happy are those whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. Happy are those to whom the Lord imputes no iniquity, and in whose spirit there is no deceit. While I kept silence, my body wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My strength was... Are you looking at the monkey on my shelf? With the horse head on it? Okay, sorry.
That monkey has suffered some terrible infection to have developed a horse head.
Okay.
We'll have to post a picture of that on the website.
Yeah, do an Instagram
of
that.
Page.
Yeah, do that on your Instagram account. Okay. For day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My strength was dried up as by the heat of summer. Then I acknowledged my sin to you, and I did not hide my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgression to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. Therefore, let all who are faithful offer prayer to you. At a time of distress, the rush of mighty waters shall not reach you. Do you want me to read those salahs at the end?
You don't have to read the salahs.
I'm just pausing.
I'm not objecting to the salahs.
You are a hiding place for me. You preserve me from trouble. You surround me with glad cries of deliverance. I will instruct you and teach you the way you should go. I will counsel you with my eye upon you. Do not be like the monkey with the horse head.
No, that was some editorial.
Do not be like a horse or a mule without understanding, whose temper must be curbed with a bit and bridle, else it will not stay near you. I want to ask you what's not staying near you.
No.
Okay. Many are the torments of the wicked, but steadfast love surrounds those who trust in the Lord. Be glad in the Lord and rejoice, O righteous, and shout for joy, all you upright in heart.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have an unusual an unusual psalm in that it actually deals with forgiveness from sin. You don't have a lot of penitential psalms. You would think there would be more, but Psalm 51 is sort of the famous one where David is asking for forgiveness, and Psalm 32 is the other really classic psalm. Now there are other lines in a psalm that are asking forgiveness, but rarely do you have a psalm dedicated to this topic, and this is one of them. Has one of my favorite words for forgiveness in the first verse. Those whose transgression is forgiven. One of the things I loved about Hebrew is that a single word carries so many meanings in it sometimes, and so that word that is translated forgiven there is a word for lifting up, or carrying, or bearing. It's actually the same exact word for don't lift up the name of the Lord in vain in the Ten Commandments. Or in Psalm 121, I lift my eyes up to the hills. And so here, you get this picture of forgiveness as that of burdens being lifted.
Oh, burdens being lifted.
Yeah, so what is being lifted up? The sin is being lifted off of the person, which is great because the sin has been wasting my body away.
Yeah, that's very visceral when you read the rest.
That there is a physical expression of sin in you feel it. Yeah. That's one of the great. The metaphysics of the Old Testament is not that we have souls. The Old Testament doesn't believe that we have a soul. The Old Testament believes we are souls. We bear we are living souls, and bodily that is part of who we are, and that's why we believe in resurrection. We don't believe in a soul going anywhere. We believe in coming back and being and resurrection. So this is that sin actually affects the body here. Strength drying me up. And so very physical kind of ideas.
Physical.
I like this. I like the Selah. There's lots of Selahs, right? Verse 4, verse 5, verse 7. I didn't read them. I like when we see them because it's just a sort of, to me, a reminder that this is a song. This is worship. It's not. We talk about them as prayers, and certainly they are, but there's a worship musical quality to this that I like.
Could that have a nuance of meaning guitar solo?
I don't think there's any reason we shouldn't read it that way.
It's as valid as any other theory.
That is. In fact, I believe that was one of the jokes on the Babylon Bee this week, that the Selah means guitar solo.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was texted to me by a former student, gifted guitarist in his own right, that is now the pastor of a church in Tijuana.
Okay.
So
on the same track.
Yes. The speaker in verse 8 is unclear. There's debate about who will instruct and teach. Is it the psalmist who is now talking to the community? Is it God who is talking to the psalmist? Is it God who is talking to the community? The commentary I was reading was saying doesn't really matter who's doing the teaching as much as the teaching is important here. Okay. And so the teaching is to don't be like a horse or a mule or a monkey with a horse.
But it will not stay near you is the
teaching.
Whoever that is in 32:8.
I think it is the teaching.
Is it wisdom?
I think it's the instruction of the teaching. I will instruct you and teach you the way you should go, counsel you with my eye. Don't be like a horse or mule without understanding or it won't stay with you.
Okay.
I think is what it is.
All right. The horse and the mule won't stay with you?
The horse and the mule, because they just run off.
Where did the mule go? Did you guys see a mule?
He was here. Well, King Saul had a problem with that. He could never find the mules.
Foreshadowing here.
But yeah, once again, don't have a lack of humility. Don't fail to learn.
Well, don't be a knucklehead.
Yes. Don't fail to learn from God's teaching, which is Torah again, right? God's way. And even though you're going to struggle if you have this steadfast love, whenever you read steadfast love in this translation, it is the Hebrew chesed, the word that's used for covenant connection to God. So that's
one word there.
That is steadfast love is one word in Hebrew, and that is a word that is emphasizing the relationship. I mean, it is God is it's steadfast love surrounds is that sense that God is both there and in relationship, chosen relationship with you. That word carries a lot of relational language in it, more than, we tend to think of affection with love, but this is a communal connection in that word.
So if I'm going to do a solo, I'm thinking like a power ballad.
Probably not the power. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say.
Okay.
You are more an expert in blues, so I don't know that you can.
It transfers.
Does it? Okay, well, that's good. Yeah. Just play it faster and it becomes rock. So
emote differently.
So those are my thoughts as I go through this psalm.
Okay.
Nice,
and it ends happy.
It does end happy.
Thank the Lord and rejoice, O righteous, and shout for joy, all you upright in heart.
It also opens happy. Happy.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
I just got weighted down with all that sin in the middle, and I do like that. I mean, I like that it talks about that a bodily sensation, visceral feeling of sin weighing you down, and the relational aspect of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I also like this, do not be like a horse or a mule. I mean, it's like, sometimes I need that size lumber upside my head, Hey, by the way, don't be like a mule.
Right. Don't make me have to get maybe have to get the bit and the bridle. Okay. Could you do this in a way that works?
It's real stuff here. Yeah. Wow.
So good stuff.
We have these things we say when we're done.
That's it. I have nothing more to say to you.
Say good stuff. I go,
So usually after my good stuff, you have like 3 more questions. So that lets you know that we're wrapping it up here.
Yeah. That podcast we thought was really good because we didn't sleep. I've been trying that a lot. It's like I haven't slept much. A lot of times, just that evidently was not the thing. I didn't sleep much last night.
Well, then, can I tell you how excited I am about Romans? Because without sleep, Book of Romans.
Well, we're going to do Matthew 4 first. Though,
okay, we'll start with Matthew, and then that will help us. We're going to go canonical.
I'll
here.
warm up.
Okay, so then let's look at Matthew 4, 1 through 11. Okay. So. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. He fasted 40 days and 40 nights, and afterwards he was famished. I bet he was famished during, but afterwards he was famished.
Afterwards.
The tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it's written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so you will not dash your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him again, "It is written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." Again the devil took him to a very high mountain, and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor, and said, "All these I will give you, if you will fall down and worship me." Jesus said to him, "Away with you, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God, and serve only him." Then the devil left him, and suddenly angels came and waited on him.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Why don't you ask me some questions so my brain will get warmed up?
Well, I love all the Old Testament quotes in here.
Yeah.
They're going. It's a scripture battle.
Is it all Deuteronomy?
No. Satan actually quotes the Psalm, which is fascinating. Because in my dissertation, I was showing.
That's right.
I was showing a ton of connections between Deuteronomy and Psalms, and how a number of the Psalms, particularly 90, 91, 92. Are referencing speeches of Moses from Deuteronomy, and I was going through all of this, and I was doing a presentation at a meeting, and someone pointed out that that's really interesting. You're showing these connections between, that the Psalms are appropriating Deuteronomy.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Which it was in some ways. Okay. She said, because in the temptations of Jesus, Satan quotes Psalm 91, and Jesus responds by quoting Deuteronomy. And I mean, that's the kind of insight that only a group of scholars would go, "Oh, look at that, that's clever." But I thought it was fun when that happened. So
was this last weekend?
SBO? This was 12 years ago.
Oh,
so, 13 years ago, actually.
Yeah.
So 14 years ago. That was a long time ago.
A while ago.
2003. Yeah, it was a while ago.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that's cool to quote a psalm, even if it is Satan. I did see a calendar, by the way, once that had "He will command his angels concerning you." and it had the Matthew 4:6 underneath it as a daily scripture calendar.
Oh,
and
it's just purely the Psalm quote.
Just the Psalm quote from that Matthew. Okay. And someone said, you might want to check the context before you put that on your flip calendar.
That tattooed on your arm.
Exactly, because kind of was Satan saying that, so maybe not the best.
That doesn't seem like a very tricky test.
Not the best
I would think I would have quoted back. Yeah, it also says don't be like a mule. I'm not going to jump off this thing. Good, nice try. Yeah.
Well, that's a really good deal, though, right? Because God's going to save him. If you do like 3 shows a day, maybe a matinee on Saturday, you get people's attention this way.
True.
This is use your power.
True.
People might listen to you.
This would play well.
If you're flashy, that's a pretty exciting show. Smoke pots and little lasers.
As I think about this, this is made me think of our discussion of Genesis about skipping some steps.
Oh, yeah.
Man and woman wanted to skip some steps.
Right.
Kind of part of this is you're going to skip. This is not the way we're going to get there to God's kingdom. We're not going to do it this way.
That's a good observation. Yeah.
And that is something Jesus needs to perennially discern in his ministry. He withdraws in times of prayer, and wilderness is a place for withdrawal and discernment, and then to tempt someone with scripture, it's tempted with something
tricky.
That's real tricky. Although that doesn't seem like a very tricky.
But then also, these are all of these temptations are temptations that are going to face Jesus throughout the ministry, right? To use power to feed self, to use power to show off, and to circumvent God's plan for an easier way seem to be temptations that are always going to be an issue, right? People are always trying to make him king.
Yeah, and that's often when he has to withdraw or praying in the garden, and he's recoiling from that heinous, fate of a cross that awaits him, and he struggles with that.
I think I'm just sitting here. Obviously, I'm not the New Testament guy, but the only miracle that you could say that he did to show off would probably be the walking on the water, and that was just the disciples, right? To speak to
the showing off miracles. That's a very short list. Yes.
To speak to he's doing it to speak to their uncertainty, right? They've just tried to make him king.
Showboat.
He rejected that.
Get back in the boat.
So he does that, I think, to reassure them that they haven't picked the wrong horse. But it is sort of a look who I am kind of thing. He didn't do that for the crowds.
Yeah, you guys start rowing and I'll catch up.
he what? He didn't do that miracle for the crowds because that would have certainly, oh my gosh.
Right.
But for the disciples.
Like when we made 180 gallons of wine just for his disciples. And no one else knew about it. Well, actually.
The kitchen staff knew.
They knew. Others knew. Right. Yeah.
His mother knew. Yeah. But we're jumping gospels here now.
And then he does multiply bread later, but
not here,
but not in this fashion.
Not to serve self.
Yeah, not to serve self, but as a compassionate response to
a hungry situation.
Yeah. I was struck in reading it this time. I normally spend some time on this in the Lucan version. Mm-hmm. And as you know, I think we've talked about this. The order is different. The last two are different.
We haven't talked
order.
on the podcast, but we've talked personally.
Yeah, personally.
That Matthew and Luke have the temptations. The last two,
and it's hard to say which one's original. Which one's like more natural, and which one seems to be motivated according to the tendencies of the author. Mm-hmm. And they're both they work with the tendencies of each author. So they say it's inherited from Q. Which is
that mythical document
from the land of Q, where anything's possible.
You're flashing back to that presentation, aren't you?
Because I came up on Facebook. It said you took a picture of me. And I'm about to tell my story about John being cut up into heaven and whom died and made you Pope and all that. And I'm pausing, and you're explaining why I'm pausing. Mm-hmm. We got my finger in my lip, and I say I was about to. Make a point by referencing an imaginary text, but then I felt better because the guy before me talked about Q.
Right, exactly.
I didn't feel so bad
that I made up a text.
I made up a text out of nothing that there's no evidence for. But there is evidence in the sense that there's a shared source. There's a shared source, seems to be shared, and in Luke it ends in the temple, as many cycles of ministry end in the temple, and it's oriented around the temple. And here it ends on a mountain.
Luke opens his gospel in the temple, and Luke closes the gospel in the temple, and the last temptation's a temple. Temple's important for Luke and Acts.
And it concludes that way. And
then Matthew opens has mountains all through, right?
Matthew is heavier on the Moses typology, which involves a lot of mountains,
right?
And here's one of them. Right?
The Transfiguration's on the mountain, the apocalyptic discourses on the mountain. He leads them up on a mountain in 28. Go ye therefore into all the world. Sermon on the Mount. Yeah.
And as I realized that, I realized 40 days fasting. That's Moses typology. Yeah. So I'm wondering if there's more Moses typology in the Q document.
Now look what you did.
These are the questions that the folks are asking.
That's what all the people are. I know all of our podcast audience wants to know how Q handles this.
We're going to get to your questions here immediately.
See, if you don't ask us questions, these are the questions he's going to bring us. Right. So you've got to send us questions.
So I'm still playing with that in my mind. It's like, maybe that was a heavily freighted Q. Q has. There's more Moses typology in the temptations, and therefore ending on a mount would be more natural. Anyway, I don't know if I'm ever going to answer that question, but
that's one of those. It's a historical curiosity, but not historical. Really terrible.
Yeah. We can still fellowship with each other.
Good, good because I don't really care. Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you.
But it did help me realize. This time in the wilderness, of course, that's so much like Moses, and when Moses goes up on the mount, he doesn't eat for 40 days and 40 nights. Okay. And the time in the wilderness, clearly, this is right after the baptism in both, right. Or in Luke, there's a genealogy in between the baptism and then the time in the wilderness.
And Mark just says to be tempted, right? He just has that passive
and he's with
comment.
The wild animals.
Oh, really? Mark, he's with wild
animals? And then the angels, he's with the wild animals, and then the angels wait upon him. And that might be an allusion to Isaiah, the peaceable kingdom.
Oh, right.
Because normally when you're with wild animals, it doesn't go so well.
That's true.
Right, and so if you test it out, you go, that sounds that's really subtle. Is that really Isaiah? Well, when he leaves the wilderness, he preaches the kingdom is here.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so maybe...
Well, of course, it also could be Daniel, and you have Son of Man stuff.
Yeah, Son of Man.
Lion's Den and Son of Man. I don't know. I'm not a New Testament guy, so I'm not burdened by these.
Yeah. I'm not going to open the door on Son of Man stuff. That's a tough nut to crack. But the thing is, what you have, this sounds like Israel's story in the wilderness, being tempted. Mm-hmm. And before that sounds like Israel's story in that God is creating a people out in the wilderness. Mm-hmm. All right? The wilderness is a place where God creates. And it's not a destination itself, but it is God brings people out of bondage to the wilderness and makes them into something, and then they enter the land. And so John is doing this thing that other prophets did who were also killed, and that's like calling people out in the wilderness. It's like, let's reboot. Here's a recapitulation of our history. So there's a making of a people in the wilderness, and Jesus joins that people. And Jesus is baptized also. And baptism as an act of solidarity, Jesus identifies with his people, so that when he goes into the wilderness, what he does in the wilderness, he does as a member of that community. He is the champion. So whether you're on the bench during the Super Bowl or whether you're playing, everybody gets a ring, right? Everyone gets the same score at the end. So your champion, he does this for everyone. So his triumph in the wilderness is everyone's triumph.
It's interesting. And I'm kind of focused back on when you said wilderness, creation happens in the wilderness. I was just thinking about in Job, you have this.
And by wilderness, I mean chaotic waters.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. That in Job, you have the Leviathan, who is this personification of primordial chaos, waters.
Right.
But you also have Behemoth, who is the personification of wilderness chaos as well.
Yeah.
And I just was at a paper this week where this guy was presenting on the Old Greek Job, so the Septuagint translation of this, and the translator translates both Leviathan and Behemoth with the same Greek word, drakon. They're both dragons. Yeah. Okay. And so, I always told students, well, what's the difference between Leviathan and Behemoth? And I said, well, the Behemoth is the Leviathan on land. Right, it's chaos on land, whatever that looks like. Consuming desert, danger, kill you. Yeah. That's Behemoth. But I was just wondering in my mind if in the translator was thinking of them both as the same, it kind of comes back to that notion of the chaos out of which God creates happening in the wilderness.
Undefined space. It has potential for good or for evil. chaotic waters or wilderness, both archetypes for uncreation.
Of uncreated.
But potential places, locations of creation.
Wow.
Yeah. So, sorry, we're not digressing. We're just answering a few questions we were sent by email. It's like, can you guys get into the land behemoth?
Because I've really been wanting to know.
Because I have a little bet going with my wife about that.
Got a sermon Sunday about the behemoth, and I was hoping you could help me on that.
Series
a whole
on
series.
The behemoth. All the behemoths of the Bible.
Taking Job 41 a verse at a time. So, yeah.
Sorry. Just indulge us. You might want to go get a cup of coffee.
This is why we added "and other distractions" in the title of the podcast, because we, something shiny catches us, and that's where we're headed.
It's like someone just jingled some keys in front of us. That's all full attention.
Well, that is fascinating. That this is an act of Jesus. There's a word for that literally. Jesus is representing the nation and doing this in some way. Yeah. I forget what that's called. It's not metonymy or something like that, but it's some fancy word.
Yeah, part for whole. Synecdoche or metonymy. I always get those mixed up.
I can't remember which one of those is which, but that Jesus is sort of is the nation is redoing the nation in the correct way.
Right. Right. Where Adam got it wrong in the garden, where Israel got it wrong in the wilderness,
Jesus is getting it right.
Our champion got it right.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Right. And that's a nice lead into Romans.
Oh, okay.
I think. Well, but I'm sure there's a lot more we could say about this, but
I went along.
He triumphs.
On Genesis.
He triumphs.
Jesus won. Spoiler alert, Jesus won.
Yeah, Jesus wins. Okay. And the score wasn't close.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah.
But I always point out to the students that he won because he knew his Old Testament, and that's why they should.
Yes.
Because Jesus knew his Old Testament.
Yes.
So that's important.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to read
the secret.
Romans?
Yeah.
Great. Romans 5, 12 through 19. Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, and death came through sin, so death spread to all because all have sinned.
Can you bring us up to what Paul was thinking before the therefore?
Sure. That makes, obviously, anytime you get the therefore, right?
I think we can just jump in right here.
I think it's pretty obvious. Sin was indeed in the world before the law, but sin is not reckoned when there is no law. Obviously. Yet death exercised dominion from Adam to Moses, even over those whose sins were not like the transgression of Adam, who is a type of the one who was to come. But the free gift is not like the trespass.
Can you read it with an intonation so that these sentences aren't confusing?
I don't think I can. I could read them in Greek so that you wouldn't know they were confusing. But okay, for if the many died through the one man's trespass, much more surely have the grace of God and the free gift and the grace of the one man, Jesus Christ, abounded for the many.
Oh, yeah, well, when you put it that way.
I'm going to need to rest after this. And the free gift is not like the effect of the one man's sin, for the judgment following one trespass brought condemnation, but the free gift following many trespasses brings justification.
Hang on, I'm going to take some Dramamine.
I'm starting to think these periods are arbitrary, that they just decided that's a good spot.
Did someone rearrange the magnets on the refrigerator again?
If, because of the one man's trespass, death exercised dominion through that one, much more surely will those who've received the abundance of grace and the free gift of righteousness exercise dominion in life through the one man, Jesus Christ.
Much more surely.
Much more
really piling
surely.
It up. Wow.
Therefore, just as the one man's trespass led to condemnation for all, so one man's act of righteousness leads to justification and life for all.
Okay.
For just as by the one man's disobedience the many were made sinners, so by the one man's obedience the many will be made righteous.
And this is why they teach diagramming sentences.
Oh, boy.
In seminary.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, we're doing a series on Romans. It's like, really? Really?
Because we want to get our church down to a manageable size.
I have been an advocate for years of using the ski symbols, publishing a Bible that uses ski symbols off to the side.
Black diamonds.
So that you have the bunny slope ones like, you know what, prodigal son, sure, go ahead, good Samaritan, okay. And then Romans, all double black diamond here. You're going to hurt yourself. Don't. You're going to pull something, break something. Don't try and do this. This is a double black diamond passage.
Going to drop in on this double black diamond.
This is a real double black diamond passage here. Yeah. So I think there's a market for that Bible, by the way. I think just have people come in. This is harder than you think. Don't do this one without trying. So,
except there's not as many bunny hills as people think.
There's not. No, there's not a lot of bunny
There's a lot more
slopes.
going on.
But
But we're not doing a series on Romans. We're just dropping in.
I feel like
we're just dropping in on the Romans.
That this is just as one man's disobedience, the many were made sinners, so one man's obedience, many will be made righteous. I think that's his thesis. Is that his thesis?
Yeah, 5:18 to 19 is where he's headed.
Okay.
With all those crazy sentences. Okay. So the analogy.
Which honestly he's been building since chapter 1.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he's been building his case since chapter 1.
Yeah, he's been like clearing the playing field.
Right.
Like,
let's make sure we're all on this.
Okay, everybody's guilty, right? All right, Jew, Gentile, we kind of leveled the playing field here. Okay, here's how God's going to handle that.
I've heard our colleague likes to say that Romans is just the book of Galatians with footnotes.
Yeah.
But boy, there's lots of footnotes here.
Yeah,
this is
lots
tough.
Of footnotes. Yeah, it's Galatians and other distractions.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's really heaping it up.
Okay.
The excessive abundance, the abundance of grace, and some of the. Yeah, I mean, I was laughing out loud at the how much more.
Much more surely.
Much more surely. This is not a. How do you say that? This is not an uncommon Jewish rhetorical practice. The how much more.
Okay.
Was it Calva Omer?
Oh, I'm not going to help you.
It's a rabbinic arguing practice, common, but not common in English. It's like
right.
You hear it. If you, being bad fathers, don't give your give your children
a stone and a snake.
Yeah, a stone and a snake. Although that's fun, but but you don't do it. Even you don't do it. How much more?
Yeah.
And it's like how much more from a negative example is not one we usually use. So that usually throws us. And
I think I may have, and that's the question, I've been shaped by my community.
How much more the opposite of what I just said is this?
If I get this and I'm an idiot, shouldn't this make more sense to other people?
Well, yeah. Okay, that's one
kind of thing
people can relate to if you're an idiot. And then okay, now you're talking clearly.
I understand this and I'm an idiot. So,
but he is heading toward this typology and analogy between Adam and Christ, the second Adam.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know he's going there, if you keep your eye on that, you can make it through those other sentences.
This is like driver's ed,
where
they say when you're driving, you look at the horizon, because if you look at the edge of the road, you'll drive to the edge of the road. So you need to look up.
That's kind of what you need to do.
Or
in some
waiters,
of this stuff.
when you're carrying soup, you need to not look at the soup. You need to look where you're walking, and you'll have an easier time keeping the soup level.
Right.
So that's what you're saying here is.
Or driving with soup.
Driving with soup.
If you deliver food to people,
that's a mess. So I would say keep your eyes on the horizon here, and you won't get off in the ditch.
Keep your eyes on his analogies and typologies.
Okay.
Yeah. And what's interesting to me is that, therefore, just as one man's trespass led to condemnation for all, so one man's act of righteousness leads to justification and life for all. Well, actually, I should back up. Probably address the question people are asking is, what implications does this have for men in ministry? The fact that Adam sinned.
That's a good point.
It's like, I think they're equal, but they just shouldn't do stuff in church. Right? All those things we spin out from Paul's analogies with Eve, we never do that with Adam.
Yeah, you're right.
No restriction. It could be because we are men interpreting
That's a fair
these
point.
scriptures. But that just struck me today because I've spent a lot of time talking about things like 1 Timothy and trying to wade through some very quick transitions that Paul makes in other letters, and there's some forgetting that Paul's using some limited typologies and some unlimited analogies.
People extrapolate those and make them universal.
Yeah, it seems like it's like that the book I have, the New Testament introduction I have, and it talks about this chapter. It talks about Adam's sin. It has a picture on the page, illustrated here by Eve.
Yeah, Adam's fall, illustrated here by Eve. Yeah, I remember that.
Sin entering the world, illustrated here by Eve. It's like, wow, nice ironic image. Here's what's interesting to me. I know that you got all these other questions.
I have many.
Yes. So one man's act of righteousness leads to justification for life and all. That really does flow nicely out of what we just read in Matthew 4.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't teach Romans very often, but I remember the last time I taught it, I was talking about, let's talk about some of the metaphors that Paul uses and images Paul uses for salvation. And here's one, man's act of righteousness in 325, he talks about expiation. How are we saved? Expiation. 580 talks about God loved us while we were still sinners, while we were still disobedient. In 510, he talks about reconciliation. And we tend to choose one metaphor and use that as a master metaphor for all the others. And that is not what Paul is doing. Okay. Because all of my students, when I introduced that, I thought, well, I'm going to spend 10 minutes on Paul's metaphors. And we went through some of the metaphors he uses for salvation because it's such a big, expansive concept. Even he's having trouble stretching the grammar and piling up all these adjectives to talk about.
How much more surely?
Yeah, how much more surely? Right? Am I right, Shirley? And the thing is, it's almost like, like a love poem piles up metaphors. It's not like, this is why I brought in Song of Solomon for you to read and don't read the naughty bits about gazelles and stuff. It's like there's no master metaphor there. It's a bunch of different. It's language and piling up metaphors and pushing language to its breaking point because you're trying to express something that's so almost ineffable and hard to wrap one's mind around. You're trying to unpack it. And C.S. Lewis talks about love that way.
Yeah. So it's not, your lips are like a scarlet thread and your cheeks are two halves of a pomegranate.
Which is it?
Is the thread connecting the pomegranate? How does that work? And the twins of a gazelle, where did the gazelle come from?
No, you're not supposed to read that
I'm not
part.
reading the gazelles. That's the naughty bits.
No gazelles. That's the naughty bits.
But yeah, so you're saying that Paul is using these images of salvation.
We always think there's a master metaphor, and that is expiation or propitiation.
Okay, that's a denominational fight there, right?
Well,
expiation.
It is, but it's also there's all these others. One man's act of righteousness is as equivalent an act of salvation as any of these other metaphors he uses. It's not like, that's just a subpoint of the act of justification through propitiation or expiation. Okay. Those are all images of this thing we're trying to wrap our minds around called salvation. And many of them relegate Jesus' entire ministry, other than the cross, to an appendix, or like we don't want to know it's a footnote. We don't know what to do with that.
Right.
But Jesus, for example, temptation in the wilderness. That's a triumph for humanity. That's a triumph for God's people.
Okay.
It's like, well, what are you going to do until you die, Jesus? I don't know. I'll do thinking about going out in the wilderness for a while, maybe walking on water.
Feed some folks, I guess.
Maybe become incarnate, things like that.
So, but this is, okay, I see what you're saying.
So we take one instance from the sweep of Christ's ministry, the cross. Obviously, it's central.
It's kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah, I'm not trying to relegate that, but we do relativize everything else. And we take one metaphor from the many images and metaphors that Paul uses, and we focus on that, and we make everything else subservient to that. And I don't think that that's true to how we read the Gospels or how we read Paul's letters.
Gotcha.
So that's a nice segue between, he's obedient, and he doesn't fall in the wilderness, and he kind of regains that ground for humanity, for Israel. And Paul's using that kind of language through one man's act of righteousness or obedience, you could say. It leads to justification and life for all. For just as by one man's disobedience the many were made sinners, so by one man's obedience the many will be made righteous.
So, okay, can I change gears and ask a question? 13 and 14, sin was indeed in the world before the law.
I'm going to go there.
But sin is not reckoned when there is no law. Yet death exercised dominion from Adam to Moses would seem to imply to me that death would not necessarily exercise dominion once the law has come through Moses.
I think what it's saying there is you have something like this. The law really clarifies the nature of your transgression.
That's verse 13. I get that.
But it's not as though sin wasn't dominating humanity before there, as witnessed by all die.
So he's not. I guess what I'm asking is he offering a positive evaluation of Torah here?
Not in Romans.
No, but in this verse.
In 13?
Yeah, 14.
Okay, walk me back through that.
Well, sin is indeed in the world before the law, but the sin is not reckoned when there's no law. So once we have the law, then you know exactly why you're dying. But death exercised dominion from Adam to Moses. So death doesn't have dominion post-Moses?
No.
In other words, post-giving of the law?
No, what he's going to get at is how the law has been misused against us by sin. the power of sin has used the law against us. This good thing that God has provided for us has been used in a way that's hurtful.
So he's going to get to that, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So that's
yeah.
we're not there yet.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
No. He's entering 5 through 8 is all this about law and how that is actually sin is so powerful that even this good thing that God gives us is used against us.
I got
and
it.
that highlights how fallen we are and how problematic sin is.
So it is in a degree, to some degree, a positive statement regarding law.
Yeah.
To say that death exercised dominion from Adam to Moses. I mean, but then this good thing came, and then of course we pervert this good ththing and we go off the rails.
Yeah.
Kind of idea.
And he gets ahead of himself all the time. So he's not there yet, but it is sounding. It is actually. There's a little foreshadowing of the negative side, the negative use of law, the negative experience of humanity with law.
Yeah, see, that's what I have to combat as an Old Testament professor, is to help them understand the giving of the Torah. The Torah is not a negative
Paul
thing.
doesn't,
Yeah, Paul's not
complicated.
He's talking about something
nature,
else.
Yeah.
He's talking about something else.
Right. And sometimes he's not, and then, of course, he has the phrase works of the law, which is not talking about, doesn't mean Old Testament, it means superficial things, that acts of spirituality and ritual. It became important in the first century, which Gentiles don't have to appropriate for their salvation.
Right.
So, there's a couple things where and then there's the tradition of the appropriate for the time, but hard to get away from Reformation reading of Paul and the law.
Oh, well, sure.
Right.
Yeah, Luther and Calvin. And
Luther,
yeah.
Right. So.
That we read through that without realizing that we read that way. What did you say, that your presuppositions that you have when you come to Paul tell you about what you're going to come out at the end with Paul? If you enter thinking Paul is against Torah, you will leave thinking Paul is against Torah. If you think he's against women, you will leave thinking he's against women. So,
and the masterful use of Luther and Calvin to address the abuses in the church of their time, that was a great use of Scripture.
Yeah.
It just wasn't true when we retroject all that back into
the first century.
First century or Moses.
20,
Yeah. So hitting all the things that the listeners are interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how many times we've gotten that question on Lutheran readings of Romans.
This is just me time. This is podcast for us today.
But I'm having fun.
Yeah. Good. No, these really do. I mean, my goodness, these scriptures work so well together, so mutually illuminating. It's nice to read these together.
Well, and obviously we're thinking in terms of Lent and sin, and so that's what's obviously joining them all today. Yeah. And Jesus is the example who overcomes that. So and
I didn't think that was in Transfiguration Sunday. I don't know how much we emphasize that that's the turning point in the Gospels as Jesus heads toward Jerusalem and begins to announce his impending death on the cross. Well,
in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. In John, he pops in and out of Jerusalem all the time.
Well, yeah.
But in the Synoptics,
that's true. Yeah,
just the one big trip.
Yeah,
so we want to talk about.
And that trip signifies his turning toward the cross. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thanks so much for going with us on the journey today. Went a little bit long, but I don't guess you mind. So
no, we did, didn't we?
Yeah. So I hope you have a great week. And don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes and send us some email questions so we'll stop answering our own esoteric ones. At, what is it?
readinginchurch@gmail.com.
Great. So thanks for listening. Have a great week.
Blessings.
Blessings.